First, let's do a quick 30-second intro. Again, we'll just do with the flow clockwise. And Tomi, if you can start, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Tomi Männikko. I'm from Nokia Data Center Solutions R&D, where I work as a hardware architect. And I've been recently working with the Open Edge server, which we have just recently also contributed to the OCP Foundation.
Thank you. Great.
Hi, my name is Lintao Zhang. I'm a research manager in Microsoft Research Asia. I'm mainly working on cloud and edge computer systems software.
Thank you, Linda.
Hi, my name is Mohan Kumar. I'm a fellow at Intel Corporation. I work in Intel's data center division, and I lead cloud architecture.
Thank you, Mohan.
Hi, I'm Bill Carter. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the OCP Foundation.
Thank you, Leo.
I'm Zaid All Kahn. I am head of infrastructure at LinkedIn, so I lead all data center compute networking efforts and all of the open efforts around Sonic and OpenLink.
Okay, great. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Zaid.
Wilson Guo. I'm the technology director of Inspur, responsible for the OCP strategy from Inspur. Also, I'm in charge of the solution appliance selling to the enterprise and hybrid cloud customers.
Thank you, Wilson.
I'm Richard Ding from Baidu. I'm the AI system architect, and my focus on our own AI computer X-Men and also the large scale training cluster that with solder hardware co-design methodology. And I'm also the major interface for the OCP projects. I'm driving the OI project.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
And my name is Kewen from Tencent Cloud, Wireless and IoT Center. So I was responsible for the hardware infrastructure for the 5G, edge computing, and IoT staffs.
Great. Thank you, Kewen.
Great, and I'm Steve Helvie, and I'm part of the team at Open Compute, focused on our channel, which really works with the manufacturers as well as the resellers across the world adopting OCP.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And my name is Rhonda Liao. I'm with Inspur US, and I'm the director of the Strategic Alliance and Marketing for the US business. So it's great to have you all. So my first question, it's going to go to Bill, Zaid, Wilson, and Richard. Okay. So many years ago, it's about 80 years ago, I think, Bill, that we have two organizations, ODCC and OCP, starting almost at the same time in different geos. 8 years later, we're talking about collaboration between those two organizations. And then we can see very similar examples from other places, such as a security protocol, such as PSU, where it seems to be starting from two different geos, always two different standards meet different needs. But looking back, what have we learned from that experience? Do you think, if you look at doing this again, that you would actually take a different approach from a collaboration perspective versus starting two approaches from two different geos from the beginning? Start with Bill.
Yeah, I think when we started down this path with OCP and ODCC, that we viewed our requirements to be quite different, and we did not have a relationship with each other. And so we brought together engineers into a room, and we had a chance to introduce ourselves, but we really didn't know much about each other. We hadn't had a chance to work together on anything, and we still did not understand how similar our businesses were, regardless of the geographies. We simply saw two geographies and assumed that the businesses and the requirements were different. So we focused on the differences. For the last 8 years, we've had opportunities to work together, and those opportunities came first off within our own geographies. The companies in North America work together through OCP, the companies in China work together through ODCC, and then later we had a chance to work together across those geographies. The projects like Sonic and like OEM project and the, some of the rack designs and the Mez card, for example, brought us together. And we learned, who each other were. We learned how to work with each other. We respected the engineering work that went on in these other companies. And so that allowed us to start looking at what we had in common. And so today is really an accumulation of all of those 8 years of relationship building. And now we're able to approach new projects with that relationship in place. And so now we really look for opportunities to do things together.
So you would have made different assumptions, or don't make the same assumptions if you were to do it again?
I don't know that we could have started out like this. I think someone said it today that collaboration is really about relationships. And for the last 8 years, I've seen how we've built relationships across organizations and across companies and across regions. And I don't know that we could have started off 8 years ago differently. It's nice to see that we're in that space today. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. How about you, Zaid?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think competition is healthy, and sometimes I agree with Bill. Like requirements are always different. I think when you put an engineer's mind on, it's like I'm gonna go build this thing. It serves my need, and then somebody goes and builds something else, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I think that at some point convergence is just natural, right? Like you tend to realize that, hey, we're solving a bigger problem. I think someone at Baidu said today that when you want to go fast, you go by yourself, but then when you want to go far, you come together, right? I think that's a really good way of saying it, because at some point, if you start and you want to collaborate with everybody, you may not get anywhere, right? Because there's too many people and everyone has unique requirements, but sometimes you just got to start that way, and then I think it's a natural, healthy thing. Actually, it's not a bad thing.
Oh, that's good. So it's a balance between the speed and then.
It's a balance between speed and the scale you want to get to, right? And that sometimes you got to start somewhere and then pivot.
Okay, great. How about you, Wilson?
Okay, I want to put it in this way into the several technical specifications. So I think there's different specs because of the different environmental problems need to solve. So that's coming the two ODCC and the OCP organization. So in China, for example, beginning on 2011, about the Scorpio, I think Richard has very familiar, the Scorpio and then the ODCC. In the Scorpio, there's the central cooling at the back of the rack, and also the whole rack has the central management. So that's because from Baidu and Ali, they need to build up a brand new data center. Now rely on the ISPs. So in China, the data center is really new at that time. So that's we have the centralized the data center infrastructure. On the other hand, for the OCP, there's the central power system, but no central cooling. The central power is at the side of the rack, and also I think besides that, for the chassis, the OCP mentioned about the open unit. It's kind of a little higher than the standard rack. So that gave much more room for the users. They can put more, accommodate more accelerators into the chassis, and also to cooling the system. So I think that's a different requirement from the customer. And coming to today, I think as as we have seen that the AI and also the age, this kind of new applications coming to the environment, and we think there will be a converge. For example, for the AI, there is OAI in OCP. Also, I think in China, Baidu participate into this work group. And for the age, I think there will, in near future also there will be some China customers involvement. Maybe some ingredients reflect their China customers' needs. So I think there will be a convert in the future, and more usage models could be reflect into the international organizations, all kind of innovations into converge together.
Okay, great, thank you. And how about you, Richard?
Yeah, I agree with Bill, Zaid, and Wilson said. So it takes time. I mean, at the early stage when the OCP and ODCC organization is established, so actually we are working together, try to find whether it's possible to combine these two specific things together. But as Bill said, at that time, actually, we don't know quite well with each other. We have our own understanding with our own business. So it's a little difficult for us to reach kind of common idea about the architecture. For example, as we also mentioned, we have the shared cooling, but OCP has integrated cooling. We have the RMC rack management controller, but there is no similar management system in the OCP rack, right? So at that time, it's for ODCC, we may think that okay, the shared cooling can reduce can help the power efficiency, that can bring down the cost, and the management, the central management can help to collect the whole system information that will automatic the deployment of our servers, right? That's the benefit. So and also for the unit, right? It's, the ODCC rack is a little lower than the OCP O unit. So that's the difference also due to the different concept of the server load design, right? So this is natural stage. But when we moved forward, okay, we found some common interest. Yeah, for example, in the AI and edge computing area. So for the OI project is a very good examples, right? So we have the similar target, right? We need to solve the similar challenges, and we found that okay, well, we can collaborate together in this new era, right, to promote a kind of common specification. I think this is a very good starting point that the ODCC members, the Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and also some other ODCC members are trying to participate in the OCP communities to find some common interest. So it's a natural stage. Yeah, we need time, and now it's very good. We are already being engaged together to bring a kind of common standards.
So it's great. It's great to hear, right? Because I heard in the agenda today, both Zaid and Bill talked about time for convergence. Richard, you talked about it. Wilson talked about time convergence. Maybe, I don't know, Bill, in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll come back and say, once we actually know it's time for convergence, do we have the speed to drive that convergence and the collaboration further? It's too early to tell, so maybe a few years later, we're coming back again and we're going to test and see how we can learn from that process once that common goal is actually set. So,
well, I actually think that we see that occurring today. So naturally, when you have, you're giving birth to these new organizations, there's, you're trying to nurture your organization, and you perceive other organizations as being a competitive threat. I mean, the ODCC folks would look at OCP as a potential competitive threat, and vice versa. And Open 19 comes along, and that's another competitive threat to these organizations. And as we move forward, we realize that we're not a competitive threat to each other. That there's a lot of good things that are being done that can be a benefit to everyone, and And so now we're actually looking at those core technologies. We talked about, you know, the cabling infrastructure with Open 19, and in fact, you know, some of that cabling concept has been implemented in, you know, Microsoft Olympus and now in the version 3 of OpenRack. You know, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on, you know, around network switchgear and Sonic, and you know, we're talking about 48-volt technology in the rack. You know, we're talking about collaboration on edge computing. So we're no longer looking at the two organizations as being in competition with each other. We're now looking at these organizations as, you know, hey, what can I use? What can I borrow from you? What can I leverage? And you know, let's share and let's don't repeat ourselves. And so we're seeing that. We're seeing that with the you know, the accelerator infrastructure, and the tremendous amount of sharing that's going on there.
So that's an excellent point. I actually witnessed myself with you, Bill, and I do think that it's a credit to the leaders like yourself here, sitting here, having a mindset to actually be willing to coexist and collaborate. So that's great. So before we move on, anybody else who has some burning comments who wants to add to that question?
I think just one more thing I wanted to sort of point out is that at the end of it, all of us have the same goal, right? In the end, what we're trying to do. And perhaps the convergence is actually a force multiplier to get to that accelerated sort of goal that we want to get to.
That is a great point. Very good. Okay, thank you. Now, we talk about the differences, the convergence in the hardware space. Well, I would assume that also covers the software too. But now, Lintao is a software expert, so we'll switch gear a little bit, but kind of similar question, right? So we also have seen different requirements across, not just hardware, but software, right? Across geos, across different organization standards. If you look at taking either OCP or other open source as an example, how should those differences be addressed in the software space?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. So the software, I think, is much more flexible. And of course, we know that different geos have different legal requirements, have different cost structures. And so because of this, there's a lot of kind of configuration or the configuration actually may be different. So, but on the software side, I think software can become a kind of a common group, and it can be used for the interoperation and for the different piece of the hardware and to work together, and so that the upper level applications can basically disregard these differences and working on a common abstraction. So I think in that sense that with an open standard, with a good software API, this could be very helpful for the different geolocations.
And actually, the open source make it easier for different geos to collaborate and adopt the technology versus different standards. Okay, great. So anybody else who wants to comment on the software side of the house? Me too. Yes.
I think you deal with the diversity in software, like he's rightly pointing out that the requirements are different. What you define is you define the interface. The interface gives you a common expectation on the contract that you have with the customer, or the employer is on top, and the software. And as long as that exists, then you can have multiple implementations live underneath the interface. And that's kind of the path that I think OCP is taken on many things, and especially on the manageability side, and that's the right approach.
Okay, that's good. And it's absolutely great to hear, right? Is the software space evolve over the time that you've seen the past to getting more easier when it comes to adopting the open standards across different geos. So that's great to hear. Great. Okay.
So I just want to make a comment about some of the software projects. So within OCP, we have about 25 projects, and it's very complex, the relationships of all these projects are very complex. And not just complex from an organizational perspective, but as developers, it's very complex, and it's hard for one company to, to be able to develop all of that. So it's nice to be able to share. But, we've seen cases where, the ODCC teams and community, developed, manageability at the rack level, and that was done years ago, and that was a weakness in our organization, and we're just now starting to kind of recognize that weakness and saying, hey, there's an opportunity for us to adopt and leverage the development that's been going on for years in ODCC. With firmware and system initialization, again, it's a very complex, set of ingredients that go into system initialization, and we started, disaggregating that process a year ago, and there's been tremendous effort from Intel to break those components up, make changes to the licensing and distribution terms that allow that code to be redistributed and compiled and built into it. There's work going on in other organizations with the Linux Foundation to do a Linux boot or core boot, working with the EFI or UEFI teams and that piece of it, working with Intel and the FSB licensing. So you have a lot of different groups that are working together to solve these problems, and now we're really starting to see that effort kind of come together. We're very close on having being able to produce system initialization firmware and redistribute it, but we've worked at it for over a year. We've been doing the same thing with security, and lots of different companies, working on that. There was talking about the different pieces of software, the work that's going on with Microsoft Research and SmartNICs, very complex work. Coincidentally, we have some pretty good, modular NIC standards now on the hardware side, and now we're able to take those smart devices and at least integrate them into various platforms, and now we actually have some paths on how to, also integrate the software into the Linux stack or into the network stack.
Great. So even though it takes time, it takes effort, but it's paying off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I want to add that in this cloud age, openness is very important, because nowadays, if you look at the big cloud players like AWS or Azure, we're at the scale that basically, if you are buying like 500,000 computers a year, you are at the scale you can build everything. So now it's very tempting for the people to build everything from scratch, and then becomes incompatible with the rest of the world. And of course, you can increase efficiency and so on and so forth. But at the same time, excuse me, the customers will have a difficult time migrating. So if you have a very fast database, for example, but it's incompatible with anything else around the world, then basically people are stuck with this infrastructure. I think at this cloud edge, we really need an open standard. And Microsoft, we made a mistake, probably not, but in a couple of decades ago, we probably made a mistake. Now we are actually embracing open source fully, and I think this is the good trend, and we reap a lot of benefit from this openness.
So Lintao, you're actually making a great points into my next question. We can come back, of course, but I think it's natural to that, because you talked about customer pain points. And that's what the next question is about, is I want to address those to the customers and talk about customer pain points and how actually open specs or open sourcing, what kind of pain points that the customers, if you put yourself in the customer's shoe, will actually help address those pain points. So I'm looking at Nokia as a customer, right? I'm looking at Intel. You've dealt with many end customers as you promote your technology. actually, Zaid, you can feel free to because you are a customer too, and Kewen, right? From a Tencent perspective, of course, Steve, you've seen, especially in the European kind of regions, you've heard about the customers' pain points. So the question is, if you look at the customer's point of view, if you think about all the new technologies that we talk about today, the AI space, the sonic space, the open edge space, you name it, right? What kind of requirements that you think an organization like OCP should actually address to actually solve those pain points for customers? So, you want to start?
Yeah. So let's take the edge space because that's a hot topic. And in the edge space, the requirements are different. So a lot of the platforms we develop and the solutions we develop are all for assuming an enterprise or a cloud usage, where there is an administrator that's very well trained and there's an IT organization that's behind. When you enter an edge world, the edge, you cannot physically access it easily. So what kind of solutions that you need to be in that space for that customer to be satisfied with the answer, and the kind of platform you create there, you cannot just say, I'm going to increase the power of my rack, I'm going to cool my rack. Because anything you put in as a solution, there is got a failure associated with it that you don't control because it's not physically under your control, it's physically behind four walls of your organization. And so the kind of solutions that we need to think about, for example, on the edge, have to think from customer working back, saying, where is this going to be deployed? What is the experience of that environment? And now I cannot just say, I have a management solution I've developed in OCP, I'm just going to use it. It needs to be edge management. It needs to be edge-focused rack because the thermal requirements of that rack are completely different from anything else that we have done so far. And that really essentially, so we shouldn't think of it as, no, I've done it once, I'm going to replicate it many times at the same. You can uniquely look at what environment requires to come up with an answer.
Very application-specific level. That's
Customer specific.
Customer-specific level. Okay. So great. That's a great example. Tomi?
Yeah, I could add that, the customer requirements are really important for any product and in the edge. We also see like mentioned already, that there are some physical constraints that we need to take into account and solve those with the product. So requirements are always the key to a good product.
And then you've worked on this open edge projects, right, in OCP. And I understand from the past that the team has actually looked through very comprehensive requirements by the customer. So you felt pretty good about what the open edge solutions is bringing to solve the problems for the customers?
Yeah, we have quite a long list of customer requirements and requirements we understand that come from the environment where this unit would be installed eventually. So that combination then, I think we are quite confident that we have addressed those requirements and issues.
Great. So I think a great testimonial of that is going to be in seeing how quick that solution is going to be adopted in the real life by the customers, and hopefully we'll see that adoption pretty quickly in the industry or in the system. So thank you, Tomi. So Kewen, do you want to add to your perspective?
Sure. So that I want to talk about the open source. Sure. Like in one of the old Chinese words that if you walk alone, I think definitely you are quick to change and make a decision which direction you should go. If you work with a team, then I think the startup and choose a direction could cost more time, but you can walk further, take a long journey, more than you walk alone, right? So working together to the open collaboration is very important, and you can do more. And I can take two examples. And one is like this one. So that for the Microsoft, they have kicked off the Sonic, so it's good. So this really solve a lot. I think the hyperscale guys pinpoints. We do not need to do everything from scratch. and we could enable the network feature, the architecture, in a short time. And we only need to focus on the in-house hardware design and to put certain feature into the pilot and run it. And as a result, we also could find a certain fix for certain features for the enhancement. So this could make the ecosystem of the networking moving forward very positively. And another reference I think is in the future, like 5G for the AI, for the edge computing side. So this ecosystem is quite complicated. So it involves so many things for the computation, storage, network connectivity in different tier of device. I think that we could not make everything happen by ourselves. So it definitely needs a collaboration across different vendors in tiers and globally to make it happen. So that's
so the open structure gives you more resources they can access to.
Yes.
That can solve your problem quicker.
Yeah. I think this code makes right person do the right thing,
Right.
and combine together to drive the result forward.
Okay. Well, that's great here. That's the value from the get-go to customers right away. So thank you, Kewen. How about you, Steve?
When we're speaking about customers, I'm referring to the non-hyperscale customers.
Sure.
So the folks that may be buying between, say, 2,000 to 20,000 servers a year. There are really 4 areas that I think are interesting when I speak with them. One is the ISV and the software stack that rides on top of it. When I speak with a customer, inevitably they want to know what workloads can I run on this that have been tested and proven. They're very used to buying a proven commodity stack. So that's one area where we can improve upon having the ISVs test and certify their solutions on top of open compute gear to make the enterprises more comfortable with that model. The second is certainly around support. So when I hear a lot of people talk about their open compute products, it's 95% on the product itself and very little, if any, on the support around it. This makes people very nervous when they're buying a product that they've never bought before, or they're not used to being able to pick up the phone and having an OEM right next to them. So having an OCP partner map out, if you get this product, here is the support framework behind it, and here's the team behind it, is the second area. The third, which is often overlooked, which I've had a surprising number of conversations, which surprised me, around procurement. So when I would talk with the business decision makers, they would say, this is interesting. Now I need you to have a 1-hour call with the procurement guys to make them understand this is going to be an entirely different procurement model than what they're used to, because they usually have large corporate enterprise agreements with some of the larger tier 1 OEMs. Well, now they may be buying a network operating system software from one vendor, they may be buying their open networking switch from another, they may be dealing with a rack integration company. Pooling all that takes a lot of education at the procurement level. And then the last is when the actual rack shows up at the facility, a lot of the facilities are not owned by the people that are deploying the gear. They don't own their own data centers, they're using a colo. This is one area where OCP has addressed a great deal in the last year, is through the Colo Ready program, where we've outlined guidelines that we can hand off to a facility and say, this is what it takes to deploy open compute gear. There is still a lot of work to be done at the facility level, because so many facility builders, the people that are building these data centers, are out building data centers that are too high-end for what OCP needs. There was one comment by a web scale company in America. He was talking to a data center audience, and he said, I do not need your tier 3 uptime institute data center. My software is going to run everything. I just need a tier 2. I don't need to be paying for all of these fancy UPS and advanced cooling systems. Everything will be redundant at the software layer, so please make it less resilient. And don't give me raised floors, give me certain aspects within the facility. So there's a lot of education there. We've just started that inroads there, but those are the 4 key areas: ISV, support structure, procurement, and then the facility angle.
Yeah, so that's great. I think your key point, my takeaway from your comment is, hey, OCP, when you deliver a technology, it doesn't stop with the technology. It's how to deliver. It's an experience that the customer have with the technology that includes everything that you said, right? So
And they do like the idea of, give me one specification, then I can go out and have multiple suppliers, and I can have that. They love that idea. It's just, how do I navigate that new procurement model?
right. It's the whole notion of how to adopt and how to scale and how to get to the door of the customer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm looking at you, Zaid, because you do speak of, from the voice of the customer. So, optional to you, but do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with him. I think with Stevie, I mean, I'm one of those guilty hyperscalers. We have our own data center. We have our own, experts that know how to do everything. But there is a huge gap because we create these great technologies, but there isn't an ecosystem out there that is, self-sufficient or is able to sort of take this to the next level. When we sort of move on and do something else, it can be, a really bad thing for the technology, right? It may not survive overall. So I think it's our duty to make sure that we contribute and build this ecosystem out there. That's at least the gap that I see. So I totally agree that is I think the next frontier for making all of these open pieces of it. It's very different than software, right? Software, you go to your GitHub, people are doing lots of things. There's a lot of easy way to contribute and sustain the development. Someone is always writing a CI/CD pipeline or doing all these things. You need that kind of transfer on the hardware ecosystem, and I think that's where the focus kind of needs to be. Yeah.
Oh, that's great insight. Thank you.
But even on the software side, we're learning that open source software projects still require software engineers to be able to download the repo, build a binary, test it, and install it. And the Sonic project has gone a step further, and they actually have almost 70 platforms that they support today, and they automatically build binaries for those platforms. And so you can go to the Sonic GitHub and you can download a binary for one of those platforms and install it and be up and running. And I think that is an absolute breakthrough for open source software projects, that they actually have a go-to-market, they have a support plan for that. And we need to do that on the hardware side, so that you can acquire a complete solution, not just the ingredients. That the hyperscalers have had the luxury of buying all these ingredients. They get a power shelf and a rack and a compute node from potentially 3 different suppliers, and do the assembly. And when they build out the data center, we really need to bring all those together and have a kit of parts that's tested and known to work together, and then have a software binary that runs on it. Because when you scale this technology to large enterprise, they're not going to have a software engineering department. As we scale out, BIOS and BMC firmware and rack management firmware, we're going to have to get to the point where we have, redistribution of binary files that are ready to install and run.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. The total solution is really what matters to getting the door of the customer. Okay, great. So, Wilson, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think, echo to Steve's opinion. I think open source is kind of help to lower the OPEX, and also for the OEM or ODM manufacturers, the capex also could be reduced. That's also one of the intention of OCP. For example, if design a system and to share the design files to a portal, and the OEM, they can easily copy or share the license-free IPs and the design system, and quickly to deploy to based on the customer's needs. So that's a really kind of a good cycle together. So I think that will be make it positive for the other player. They can add more ingredients or kind of innovations, ideas into that ecosystem. I think this is really a good idea, and we could also not only the end user but also the manufacturer, they also can mutual beneficial from this involvement.
Right. So definitely the value of open sourcing is visible and apparent to many of us. So that kind of wraps up the 3 questions. So I do have one final request for all of you. But before I go there, anything else to add from you to those questions we just asked? Any other comments you want to make? Okay. So it's the end of the OCP China Day. I'd like for each one of you to basically give your feedback or comments. How do you feel about this OCP China Day? Anything you want to say to the audience in China who's as passionate about open sourcing? Anything you want to say about today's event? So we'll take turn. We'll start with Steve and go all the way to Tomi. Steve.
So I've said it up on stage. The passion that around open source continues here. I was the OAI. The accelerator presentation was really amazing, the way that they showed all of the companies that are working on this, and the majority of them being based out of China. So the leadership itself, the quality of leadership and the engagement coming out of China, I think exceeded my expectation over the last 6 to 8 months. I think that's the biggest noticeable thing, which was on exhibit here today.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I think for today's meeting is very impressive. That in the general it's 500, now it's more than 1,000. So it's quite amazing number and attendees. You can see that how in China, I think from different industry, how they are interested with OCP to join together to work something in the future. And the different projects present so many things. And from Edge, OAI, and software, and also including different companies talking about their contributions in Sonics, right? So looking forward for the future, I think more and more in China, I see that a lot of new attendees, suppliers will be there to working together.
Yeah, this event is a great success. So actually, we prepared for the event several months ago, right? We worked together to discuss the agenda, the details, and every week. So that makes the event is a great success, and also it's attracted a lot of attention from the China community, right? So previously we anticipated only 500 people, right? But it's actually much more than this. Okay, so it's very good. And for Baidu, so this year we joined the OCP community, and we started with the OAI project, and I think that is a good starting point. And we also want to contribute more, like in the edge computing, in the 48 watt power, and also the liquid cooling, this kind of system. We want to work with OCP communities together on these projects.
Okay. For me, I think it's really beyond my expectation. I think share the opinion that at the beginning, I think 500 people is kind of hard to achieve. But when today I entered the ballroom, I think it's about more than 700 people. So and also across to the end of the day, I think it's not only the speakers but also the audience. They are exhausted, but still has hundreds of people stay there and listen to the presentations. So that's, I think, their passion, and they're really eager to understand what's the cutting edge technology from the worldwide organizations. So that's their intent too. So I think this is a really a good event, and hopefully I think next year, if still has one event in China, I think the number of the audiences will exceed 10,000. Sorry, 1,000 people here. And speaking of the sessions, most impressive to me, I think, is the one is the OAI, another one is the edge computing. I think the OAI is kind of we not only the AI computing power delivered by the system, but also they address the kind of a pinpoint for the, for example, the power consumption from the whole system, and the bottleneck of the the high-speed signal, how we can pave a way to get better performance from the system and get the central management. So I think this idea has really brilliant. And also the edge, I think from Nokia and also from the China players, they are talking about their ideas on how they can turn the idea into real product. And personally looking forward to have more landing physical systems and POCs next year, so that we can share the BKM to the customers in China.
Thank you also.
I think what amazed me was the how open source here is not just like like the passion in the room, the amount of presentations that were just really emphasizing openness, desegregation, like that. It's like a very integral part of staying ahead of the curve. It was very predominant throughout all the presentations, the thinking and the collaboration. Even though they may be competitors, it doesn't matter. It's like coming together to work on solving this common problem. I think that was my biggest takeaway, is that it's very apparent that in China this is the forefront. This is the only way to do this, which is an amazing feat, because a lot of us in North America have struggled with bringing open source to the center piece. Here it's almost like it's fully embraced, and it's just wonderful to see it.
Thank you, Zaid.
Well, first off, I want to thank the Inspur team, because we've been planning this for several months now, and as you know, right, it's when if we're on the west coast of the U.S., it's late in the evening, late afternoon, early evening. It's dinner time. We're hungry. It's at the end of the day. We've had a long day. We're on a phone call with the China team, and it's early in the morning, and they're commuting into work and trying to answer, these calls, and then Steve's in London, and it's the middle of the night for him, and somehow this all came together, and thank you to the team for doing that. So the foundation is a small staff. We have less than a dozen employees, and it's important that we don't get in the way of collaboration. We want to enable it. We don't want to be the bottleneck, and we can't be the bottleneck. We want this to scale independently of whatever we do as individuals. Today, I felt that, and I saw how open sourcing and how this community in China is scaling without our involvement, which is great. There was the presentations from everybody up here talked about the work that they're doing with their supplier partners, with other community members, technology they're working on, enabling that they're doing, and it's it's happening without us. It's happening without this foundation staff, which is exactly what we wanted. And it's really exciting to see that, that wildfire just taking off. And like you say, it's phenomenal. And that open source mentality and embracing collaboration.
You were just there spiritually, not physically. You were there.
Right.
Thank you, Bill. Mohan.
So first of all, I have to give kudos to the organizers and the sponsors of this event, because I was told this was an open to everyone type of an event, and it had very much the feel of other conferences I attend where people have to pay upwards of $1,000 to come in and attend. So hats off to you guys for doing a wonderful job.
All of our events are free. Actually, I should say that our regional, we charge a nominal fee at the 2 summits, but all the workshops and regional meetups are free.
And I was one of the probably a handful of speakers that was doing my presentation in English. I was very concerned when I come in that I would present and everybody would be looking at their phone, but they were very engaged, and I could see just from the stage that they were interested and fully engaged, and they wanted to be part of this process. That was very gratifying, in spite of the language barrier.
Yeah, it also shows how the audience respect folks like you guys come all the way to present even in English. I think it's a testimony. Thank you. Yes, Lintao?
Yeah, so this is actually as I mentioned, that this is my first time to interact with this OCP community, and I was really impressed. So, traditionally, my understanding was, of course, I'm not a hardware guy, but traditionally, I believe that the hardware people are usually work in quite, kind of secretively, and especially the lower, the more secretive, especially those chip producers, than the architect, the systems. So nowadays, I think I'm very glad to see that the openness and open source kind of movement now are kind of becoming burned into everyone's mindset. Even the chip people are actually starting to open their designs and so on and so forth. So from a systems software developer point of view, I think this is a great opportunity for us to work together and make the entire system work better, because now we understand what's going on inside and out. So.
Yes, very successful event indeed, and I heard that there were like half of the people would not fit in, so there were so many interested people, and hundreds of thousands of streamers listening to the live presentation. So I think events like this and OCP in general, I think it's kind of good way of bridging, nations, teams, wherever around the world. So I think it's events like this are really good and needed.
You are what makes this event attractive to the audience. Seriously. Okay, so I think the organizers did a great job pulling all the agenda together, but your personal charisma, your technology, your presentations, your personal presence, it what actually makes this whole event as successful it can be. So with that, thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we hope to see your continued support in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.